Marcus wiped the grease from his hands with an old rag, staring at the broken mining equipment that surrounded him in the repair bay. The colony of New Terra had been struggling for months, and the constant breakdowns weren't helping. As the only certified mechanic for 300 miles, he barely had time to sleep, let alone think about the strange stories the miners kept telling. They spoke of sounds in the deep caves, not the usual creaking of settling rock or the whistle of wind through tunnels. These were different, melodic almost, like whale songs echoing from the planet's core. Some claimed they saw lights dancing in the abandoned shafts, colors that shouldn't exist in the perpetual darkness below ground. Marcus had dismissed it all as mining madness until young Tommy Chen burst into his workshop that morning, eyes wide with excitement and fear. "Mr. Marcus, you gotta come see this," Tommy panted, still catching his breath from running. "It's in the old Shaft 7. There's something down there, something big." The boy was the son of one of the miners, always poking around where he shouldn't, but Tommy was smart, observant. If he said something was worth seeing, Marcus usually listened. "What kind of something, Tommy?" Marcus asked, setting down his plasma torch. "I don't know how to describe it. It's like a mountain that breathes. And there's a little one too, smaller but still bigger than my dad's hauler truck." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. The boy's description matched some of the wilder stories he'd been hearing. Stories about creatures from the old times, from before humans arrived on New Terra. The planet had been surveyed decades ago, declared uninhabited. But surveys weren't perfect, especially on worlds as large and complex as this one. "Show me," Marcus said, grabbing his toolkit and emergency kit. Something in Tommy's voice convinced him this wasn't a prank or imagination. They took Marcus's all-terrain vehicle through the winding paths that led to the abandoned mining sector. Shaft 7 had been sealed off months ago after a cave-in made it too dangerous for regular operations. The sealed entrance had been torn open from the inside, metal barriers twisted and bent like paper. "It happened 3 days ago," Tommy explained as they approached. "There was this sound like thunder but musical. Then the barrier just exploded outward. Nobody's been brave enough to go inside since." Marcus examined the twisted metal. Whatever had done this possessed incredible strength. The emergency lights still functioned, casting eerie shadows into the tunnel beyond. He grabbed 2 portable lamps from his vehicle and handed one to Tommy. "Stay close and stay quiet," he whispered. "If I tell you to run, you run. Understand?" The boy nodded solemnly. They descended into the shaft, their footsteps echoing in the silence. The tunnel stretched deeper than Marcus remembered, as if it had been expanded. The walls showed signs of being melted and reformed, creating smooth surfaces that reflected their lamplight in strange ways. After 20 minutes of careful walking, they heard it. A low, rumbling sound that seemed to come from the very stones around them. Not threatening, but sad, mournful, like something in great pain. "That's the sound I heard," Tommy whispered, "but it's quieter now." They rounded a bend and their lights illuminated something that made Marcus stop breathing for a moment. The tunnel opened into a vast cavern, larger than the colony's main hangar. And filling most of that space was a creature unlike anything in human records. It looked like the dragons from ancient Earth legends, but real, living, breathing. Its scales shimmered with an internal light, colors shifting from deep purple to silver to gold. The creature was enormous, easily 200 feet from nose to tail. But it was clearly injured. One wing hung at an awkward angle, and a large section of its side showed damaged scales and what looked like infected wounds. Beside the great creature sat a smaller one, perhaps 30 feet long, with scales that glowed brighter than its parents. The young dragon was gently touching the larger one's wounds with its snout, making soft chirping sounds that echoed through the cavern. "Mother of mercy," Marcus breathed. The smaller dragon's head snapped toward them, eyes like liquid starlight focusing on the 2 humans. But instead of aggression, Marcus saw intelligence in those eyes. Ancient intelligence and desperation. The young dragon approached them slowly, moving with careful grace. It stopped just outside the range of their lights and began to make a series of sounds. Not random noise, but patterns. It was trying to communicate. Marcus had always been good with patterns. It was what made him such a skilled mechanic, and slowly he began to recognize what the dragon was doing. It would make a sound, then touch its parent's wounded side. Then it would look back at them and repeat the sound. It's asking for help, Marcus realized. It knows we're intelligent and it's asking us to help its mother. Tommy stepped forward, surprisingly brave for a 12-year-old boy. "Can we help them, Mr. Marcus?" Marcus looked at the massive injured dragon, at wounds that would challenge the best veterinarians on Earth. Then he looked at his toolkit, designed for fixing machines, not living creatures. But wounds were wounds, and infection was infection. The principles weren't that different. "I don't know," he said honestly, "but I think we have to try." The young dragon seemed to understand their intent. It backed away, giving them space while keeping its attention on them. Marcus approached the great dragon slowly, hands visible, speaking in calm, gentle tones as he would to any frightened animal. The ancient creature's eyes opened as he drew near. They were the size of dinner plates, filled with pain but also hope. The dragon made no move to threaten him, only watched as Marcus examined the wounds. They were infected badly. Without treatment, the magnificent creature would die within days, but the damage was primarily to soft tissue and some broken bones. Nothing that couldn't be repaired with the right tools and knowledge. Marcus looked at his toolkit again, then at the two dragons watching him with desperate hope. He thought about the colony's medical supplies, about the industrial equipment that could be repurposed for surgery, about the challenge of treating a patient larger than most buildings. "Tommy," he said quietly, "run back to the colony. Tell Dr. Sarah to bring everything she's got. Tell her we need surgical supplies, antibiotics, everything. And tell Chief Administrator Wells that we've made first contact." As the boy ran toward the tunnel entrance, Marcus looked up at the ancient dragon and smiled. "Don't worry, old girl. We'll figure this out together." Dr. Sarah Chen arrived at Shaft 7 3 hours later with a medical team and enough supplies to stock a field hospital. She was Tommy's aunt and the colony's chief medical officer, a woman who had seen everything from mining accidents to alien parasites. But even she stopped short when her lights illuminated the massive dragon. "Sweet heaven," she whispered, then immediately shifted into professional mode. "Marcus, what are we dealing with?" Marcus had spent the waiting time observing the dragons and making careful notes. The young one had stayed close, occasionally bringing him small objects from around the cavern. Pieces of metal, crystalline formations, even what looked like medical instruments from some unknown technology. "Multiple infected wounds along the left side and back," Marcus reported. "One wing is definitely broken, probably in 2 places. The infection is spreading, but it's responding to the antiseptic I applied. Temperature seems elevated. Breathing is labored, but stable." Dr. Chen approached cautiously, her medical scanner in hand. The young dragon watched her every move but made no attempt to interfere. When she began scanning the injured parent, it actually seemed to approve, making soft, encouraging sounds. "The physiology is remarkable," Dr. Chen muttered, studying her readings. "It's like a combination of reptilian and mammalian characteristics, but with biological systems I've never seen. The bone density is incredible, but that's probably why the wing isn't a simple fracture. We're looking at a complex break." Administrator Wells arrived with a security team just as Dr. Chen was completing her initial examination. He was a practical man who had run mining operations on 6 different worlds, but the sight of the dragons left him speechless for several minutes. "First contact protocols," he finally managed. "We need to follow proper procedures." "The proper procedure is saving a life," Dr. Chen said firmly. "This creature is dying and its offspring brought us here specifically to help. That makes it a medical emergency first, diplomatic situation second." The young dragon seemed to sense the tension in their voices. It moved between the humans and its parent, not threatening but protective. Then it did something that surprised everyone. It began to trace symbols in the dirt with its claw. Marcus knelt down to examine the markings. They weren't random scratches. The symbols showed clear patterns, mathematical relationships. The dragon was trying to communicate using universal concepts. "It's showing us the molecular structure of something," Dr. Chen realized, comparing the symbols to her medical scanner data. "This compound, it's what the parent needs. Some kind of natural antibiotic or healing accelerant." The young dragon pointed to one of the crystalline formations it had brought earlier. Dr. Chen's scanner revealed that the crystal contained complex, organic compounds that would indeed help fight the infection and promote healing. "Intelligent xenobiology," Administrator Wells said, his voice filled with awe. They understand medicine, chemistry, probably more than we do about their own physiology. Over the next 6 hours, an extraordinary collaboration developed. The young dragon guided the medical team, showing them which natural compounds to use, how to apply them, even demonstrating pressure points that would help with pain management. Dr. Chen worked with tools designed for humans on a patient larger than most vehicles, while Marcus rigged support systems to help set the broken wing. The ancient dragon remained conscious throughout the treatment, occasionally making soft sounds that her offspring would translate into helpful gestures or new information. It became clear that the two creatures were communicating on levels humans couldn't perceive, sharing knowledge that spanned generations. "How old do you think she is?" Tommy asked, having returned with fresh supplies. Dr. Chen paused in her work to consider. Based on the bone density and the complexity of her biological systems, possibly thousands of years, maybe tens of thousands. Administrator Wells had been coordinating with the colonial government and Earth Command. The implications of first, contact with an intelligent species were enormous, but the immediate situation took priority over protocol. "Earth Command wants us to establish communication," he reported. "They're sending a xenolinguistics team, but it won't arrive for 3 months. "We don't need to wait," Marcus said, watching the young dragon carefully arrange medical supplies. "Communication is already happening. Look." The young dragon had created a complex arrangement of objects, medical tools, crystalline formations, pieces of metal, and even some of Tommy's drawings that the boy had shared. The arrangement clearly showed the relationship between the objects, a kind of three-dimensional language that conveyed meaning through position and context. Dr. Chen stepped back from her patient, exhaustion evident on her face. "The wing is set and stabilized. The infection is responding to treatment. She's going to live." The ancient dragon's eyes focused on the doctor, and she made a sound unlike any they had heard before. It was musical, complex, and somehow conveyed gratitude in a way that transcended species barriers. The young dragon echoed the sound, adding harmonies that made the cavern ring like a cathedral. "They're singing," Tommy whispered. "They're singing thank you." As if responding to the boy's understanding, both dragons began a more elaborate song. The sounds resonated through the cavern, creating patterns of echoes that seemed to paint pictures in sound. Marcus found himself seeing images in his mind. Vast cities beneath the mountains, dragons soaring through crystal caverns, technology that merged biology and engineering in ways humans had never imagined. "They're showing us their history," Dr. Chen realized. "This planet wasn't uninhabited. They've been here for millennia, living in the deep places." The song continued, and the images became more specific. Dragons working alongside other creatures, building wonders in the planet's depths. Then came darker images. A great disaster, perhaps a plague or environmental catastrophe. Most of the dragons dying, their cities falling empty, the survivors retreating deeper underground to wait for better times. "She's the last of the adults," Marcus understood suddenly. "Her child is the only young one left. They've been alone for generations." The ancient dragon's song shifted, becoming hopeful. New images appeared, dragons and humans working together, sharing knowledge, healing not just individual wounds but the damage done to their entire species. When the song ended, the cavern fell silent except for the steady breathing of the healing dragon. The young one approached Dr. Chen and gently touched her hand with the tip of its snout. Then it moved to Marcus, repeating the gesture. Finally, it touched Tommy's forehead very gently and the boy giggled. "I think," said Administrator Wells quietly, "our colony just became a lot more interesting." Dr. Chen was already making plans. "We'll need to establish a proper medical station here, regular monitoring, proper nutrition for both of them, and we need to learn more about their physiology. And their technology," Marcus added, looking at some of the crystalline formations that clearly showed artificial construction. "If they've been here for thousands of years, they know things about this planet that could help everyone." The young dragon seemed to understand their discussion. It moved to another part of the cavern and returned with something that made everyone's breath catch. It was clearly a manufactured device, but like nothing in human technology, crystalline and metallic components were seamlessly integrated with what looked like living tissue, creating a tool that seemed to pulse with its own life. First contact protocols just became a lot more complicated. Administrator Wells muttered, but he was smiling. And a lot more wonderful. 3 weeks after the initial contact, the cavern had been transformed into something between a medical facility and a diplomatic embassy. Portable generators powered human equipment, while crystalline dragon technology provided lighting that seemed to grow from the walls themselves. The ancient dragon, who had begun responding to the name Lyrilleth that Tommy had given her, was recovering steadily. Marcus had barely left the cavern during those weeks, fascinated by the integration of biological and technological systems that the dragons used. The young one, Zephyr, had become his constant companion, teaching him to understand the living machines that maintained their underground civilization. "Watch closely," Dr. Chen said to the xenobiology team that had arrived from Earth. "The healing rate is unlike anything we've documented." Lyrilleth's wounds were closing at a rate that should have been impossible. But it wasn't just natural healing. Zephyr would regularly apply different crystalline compounds to the injuries, and Marcus had observed tiny organisms that seemed to accelerate cellular repair while preventing infection. "It's not just medicine," Marcus explained to the fascinated scientists. "It's symbiosis. They've developed relationships with microorganisms that function like programmable medical nanobots, but these are alive, evolving, adapting to new challenges in real time." Dr. Elizabeth Warren, the lead xenobiologist, was taking detailed scans of the healing process. This could revolutionize human medicine. If we could understand how to replicate these symbiotic relationships. Zephyr watched the human scientists with obvious intelligence, occasionally offering corrections to their understanding by rearranging the crystalline communication tools or bringing new examples from deeper in the cavern. The young dragon had learned to recognize human facial expressions and could distinguish between confusion, understanding, and excitement in the research team. "The remarkable thing," Dr. Warren continued, "is that they seem to have anticipated our arrival. Not specifically, but they've prepared for the possibility of contact with other intelligent species." This had become evident when Zephyr led them to what could only be described as a library. Crystalline matrices stored information in ways that human technology was just beginning to understand. But the organization was clearly designed to be accessible to different types of minds. Mathematical concepts were presented in multiple formats. Historical information was stored in sensory experiences that could be adapted for different perceptual systems. Tommy had become particularly good at interpreting these stored experiences. His young mind seemed more adaptable to the dragon's methods of information sharing. Through him, they learned that Lyrilleth was indeed one of the last adult dragons, but more importantly, she was a keeper, a guardian of their civilization's accumulated knowledge. "She's like a living library," Tommy explained to Administrator Wells during one of their briefings. "But it's not just facts and stuff. She knows how to make things work together, how to solve problems that take humans years to figure out." This became apparent when the colony's main water purification system failed. It was a catastrophic breakdown that would normally require weeks to repair and replacement parts from Earth. Marcus was preparing for emergency rationing when Zephyr approached him with a selection of crystalline tools. "You want to help fix it?" Marcus asked. Zephyr's response was to lead the entire repair team to the broken system. What followed was a demonstration of problem-solving that left the human engineers speechless. The dragon examined the machinery with senses that could perceive molecular structures and energy flows invisible to human technology. Within hours, Zephyr had guided them through modifications that not only repaired the system, but improved its efficiency by 40%. "They don't just fix problems," Chief Engineer Rodriguez reported to Administrator Wells. "They solve them at a fundamental level. This water system is now better than when we first installed it." Word of the dragon's abilities was spreading throughout the colony, but not everyone was pleased. A faction led by mining supervisor Harrison argued that the dragons represented a security risk and a threat to human independence on New Terra. "We can't become dependent on alien technology," Harrison argued during a heated colony meeting. "What happens when they decide they don't want to help anymore? What happens if there are more of them out there with different intentions?" Dr. Chen stood to respond. "What happens if we turn our backs on the greatest opportunity for advancement in human history?" These beings have lived on this planet for millennia. They understand ecosystems we're just beginning to study. They have medical knowledge that could save millions of human lives. The debate was interrupted when alarms began sounding throughout the colony. A massive storm was approaching, the kind of weather event that had claimed several mining settlements on other worlds. The colony's weather shields were designed to handle normal storms, but the sensor readings showed something far beyond normal parameters. Winds approaching 300 kilometers per hour, reported the weather station. Electromagnetic interference is off the charts. This is going to be a direct hit. Administrator Wells immediately began emergency protocols, but they all knew the colony's defenses weren't adequate for a storm of this magnitude. They had perhaps 6 hours to prepare for what could be the complete destruction of New Terra's human presence. That's when Lyrillith spoke for the first time. The sound filled the colony's communication channels, transmitted through the crystalline network that Zephyr had somehow integrated with their electronics. It wasn't human speech, but meaning flowed directly into their minds. Ancient, powerful, and absolutely determined. The storm is not natural. The translation systems rendered her communication. It is the planet's fever response to deep mining in the sacred caverns. The wound must be healed or the fever will continue. Supervisor Harrison's face went pale. The new deep shaft. We broke through into a cavern system yesterday. There was some kind of crystalline formation, but we cleared it to continue mining. Through the communication link, they could sense Lyrillith's distress. The planetary nervous system, damaged. The storm will grow until the damage is repaired or all surface activity ceases. Can it be fixed? Administrator Wells asked. Yes, but not with your technology alone. Partnership is required. Dr. Chen was already gathering her equipment. What do you need from us? The response came through images and sensations that the translation system struggled to interpret. They needed human engineering skills combined with dragon biotechnology. They needed to work together to repair damage that neither species could fix alone. And they needed to do it while a storm capable of destroying everything approached their position. How long do we have? Marcus asked. If we begin now, the repair can be completed before the storm reaches its full power. But all must work together. Trust is required. Supervisor Harrison looked around the room at faces that showed determination rather than fear. I may not like depending on aliens, but I like being dead even less. What's the plan? Zephyr was already moving, leading a mixed team of humans and dragon-guided technology toward the site of the damaged cavern. Marcus grabbed his tools and ran to keep up, knowing that the next few hours would determine not just the survival of the colony, but the future relationship between two species learning to work together. The damaged cavern was unlike anything the human team had seen before. The space stretched for hundreds of meters in all directions, filled with crystalline formations that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. What the mining team had dismissed as pretty rocks were actually part of a vast biological computer network that connected different parts of the planet's ecosystem. It's like neural pathways, Dr. Warren breathed, scanning the formations with her equipment. But on a planetary scale, this entire cavern is essentially part of the planet's brain. The mining equipment had torn through several major crystal clusters, leaving jagged breaks that sparked with unstable energy. The damage was worse than they had first realized. Some of the formations were trying to regrow, but without proper guidance, the new growth was chaotic, sending conflicting signals through the planetary network. Marcus examined the mining damage with growing concern. We didn't just break some crystals. We performed lobotomy on the planet itself. Lyrillith had somehow managed to make the journey from her healing cavern, supported by a framework of living crystal that Zephyr had constructed. Her presence seemed to calm the chaotic energy patterns, but she was clearly straining herself beyond safe limits. The pattern must be restored. Her communication came through the crystal network, but human knowledge of energy flow is needed. Dragon memory holds the original pattern. Human engineering can create the pathway for regrowth. Dr. Chen monitored Lyrillith's vital signs through the medical equipment they had set up. She's pushing herself too hard. Her healing isn't complete. This level of mental effort could cause permanent damage. If we don't fix this, permanent damage to everyone becomes irrelevant, Administrator Wells pointed out, watching the storm readings grow steadily worse. What do you need us to do? The solution that emerged was like nothing in human engineering manuals. Using a combination of human technology and dragon biotechnology, they would create a hybrid repair system. Marcus would use his understanding of energy flow and circuit design to create pathways for the crystal regrowth, while Zephyr provided the biological templates that would guide the living systems back into their proper patterns. "It's like performing surgery and electrical work at the same time," Marcus muttered, connecting human power conduits to dragon crystal interfaces on a patient the size of a continent. The work required absolute precision and perfect communication between species that had evolved completely different approaches to technology. Human tools worked with mechanical precision, but lacked the adaptive intelligence of living systems. Dragon biotechnology was incredibly sophisticated, but required biological understanding that humans were only beginning to grasp. Tommy proved to be crucial in bridging the gap. His young mind was apparently better at processing the multi-layered communication that the work required. He would receive complex instructions from Lyraleth, translate them into concepts that Marcus could understand, then relay human questions back to the dragons. "She says the next crystal cluster needs to be connected to the power grid, but not directly," Tommy explained, his forehead creased with concentration. "It needs to be like a heart valve. It should only let energy flow in one direction, and only when the pressure is right." Marcus nodded, designing a flow control system that would interface with the living crystal. Around them, other teams were working on similar connections, each one requiring careful coordination between human engineering and dragon biology. Chief Engineer Rodriguez was struggling with a particularly complex junction. "I need more power flow through this section, but every time I increase the current, the biological components shut down." Zephyr approached the problem from the dragon perspective, gently touching the crystal formation and somehow communicating with the biological systems directly. After several minutes of what looked like meditation, the young dragon began rearranging some of the smaller crystal formations. "It's not about forcing more power through," Dr. Warren realized, watching the dragons work. "It's about teaching the system to handle the power more efficiently. The biological components are learning to adapt to our electrical systems." As the hours passed, the hybrid repair network began to take shape. Sections of damaged crystal were replaced with combinations of human electronics and dragon biotechnology that worked together in ways that neither species could have achieved alone. The chaotic energy patterns began to stabilize, and the storm readings showed the first signs of improvement. But the work was taking its toll on everyone, especially Lyraleth. The ancient dragon was channeling enormous amounts of information and energy through her own nervous system to guide the planetary repair. Dr. Chen's medical readings showed dangerous stress levels that were getting worse with each passing hour. "We're losing her," Dr. Chen warned. "Her biological systems can't handle this much longer." "How much more work is needed?" Administrator Wells asked. Marcus looked at the repair status displays that showed a mixture of human readouts and dragon bioluminescent patterns. "Maybe 2 more hours for the critical connections. But if she collapses before then, the planetary system will destabilize completely," Tommy finished, his connection to the dragon communication network giving him insights that surprised the adults. "And the storm will destroy everything on the surface." That's when Supervisor Harrison did something that surprised everyone. The man who had been most opposed to cooperating with the dragons stepped forward with a determination that Marcus had only seen when Harrison was facing down a dangerous mining situation. "What if we shared the load?" Harrison asked. "You said this network responds to mental patterns. What if more humans connected to help support the dragon?" Dr. Warren looked alarmed. "We don't understand the biological interface well enough. Connecting human nervous systems to an alien network could be extremely dangerous." "More dangerous than being destroyed by a planetary storm?" Harrison asked. "Marcus, is it possible?" Marcus examined the crystal interfaces that Zephyr had been using to connect human technology to the dragon network. "With some modifications, it might be possible to create a mental connection that would allow humans to share some of the computational load." "It's possible," Marcus said slowly. "But Dr. Warren is right. We don't know what effect it would have on human minds. And we don't know if human thought patterns are compatible with the planetary network." "Only one way to find out," Harrison said, approaching the modified interface that Marcus was hastily assembling. "Besides, if this doesn't work, we won't be around to worry about side effects." The first connection was surprisingly gentle. Harrison's consciousness touched the edge of the planetary network, and suddenly he could feel the vast patterns of energy and information that flowed through New Terra's living systems. It was overwhelming at first, but gradually his mind began to adapt to the new sensory input. "It's incredible," Harrison whispered, his eyes wide with wonder. "I can feel the whole planet, every ecosystem, every weather pattern, every living thing, and I can feel her too." Through the network, Harrison's consciousness encountered Lyrelith's ancient mind. The dragon's thoughts were vast and complex, filled with thousands of years of accumulated knowledge and wisdom. But they were also tired, strained beyond their limits by the effort to heal the planetary damage. Without hesitation, Harrison offered his own mental strength to support the dragon's efforts. His human mind couldn't match her knowledge or experience, but it could provide additional processing power and fresh perspectives on the engineering challenges they faced. One by one, other humans joined the network. Dr. Chen connected to help monitor the biological aspects of the repair. Marcus linked his understanding of energy flow and mechanical systems. Tommy, with his natural adaptability, became a bridge between human and dragon thought patterns. Even Dr. Warren eventually connected, her scientific training helping to analyze and optimize the hybrid systems they were creating. Working together through the planetary network, human ingenuity combined with dragon wisdom created solutions that neither species could have imagined alone. The repair work accelerated dramatically as problems were solved from multiple perspectives simultaneously. The mental connection to the planetary network changed everything for the humans involved. Through Lyrelith's ancient memories, they experienced the true history of New Terra. They saw the planet as it had been thousands of years ago, a paradise of floating crystal cities and bioengineered forests where dragons and other intelligent species lived in harmony with the living world. There were others, Dr. Warren whispered through the network connection. Dragons weren't alone here. This was a civilization of multiple species working together. Marcus felt Lyrelith's sadness as the memories continued. A plague had swept through the planet centuries ago, targeting the neural interfaces that allowed different species to communicate and work together. Most of the population had died not from disease but from the isolation that followed. Unable to maintain their integrated civilization without the connections that bound them together. The dragons survived because they could maintain some connections through biological methods. Tommy understood, his young mind processing the complex information streams. But they've been alone for so long, waiting for someone else who might be able to restore the old ways. Through the shared consciousness, Harrison experienced the planet's perspective on human colonization. New Terra hadn't been uninhabited. It had been sleeping, its surviving systems maintained by the few remaining dragons while waiting for new intelligences that might be able to revive its damaged networks. We're not invaders, Harrison realized. We're potential partners in healing something that's been broken for centuries. The storm above them was beginning to weaken as the planetary network repairs took effect. But the shared mental effort was revealing problems that went far deeper than the mining damage. The plague that had destroyed the original civilization had left scars throughout the planet's biological systems. Some of the damage was so old and so complex that even Lyrelith's vast knowledge couldn't fully comprehend it. Human technology might be the key, Dr. Chen discovered, her medical background allowing her to recognize patterns that the dragons had missed. The plague was biological, but it affected technological systems too. Dragon biotechnology can't repair the damage because it's too similar to what was attacked. Human mechanical systems might be immune to the original plague effects. This revelation opened new possibilities for restoration. By combining human technology with dragon biological systems, they could create hybrid networks that would be resistant to the ancient plague while restoring the planet's full functionality. But the work was exhausting everyone involved, especially Lyrelith. Even with human support, the mental effort required to guide planetary-scale repairs was pushing the ancient dragon beyond her limits. Her physical healing was being reversed by the stress, and Dr. Chen's medical readings showed dangerous deterioration. "We need to complete the critical repairs now," Marcus warned through the network. "She can't maintain this much longer." Working with desperate efficiency, the combined human-dragon team focused on the essential connections that would stabilize the planetary system. They bypassed damaged sections, created workarounds for systems that couldn't be immediately repaired, and established backup pathways that would keep the planet stable, while more comprehensive healing could take place over time. Zephyr, meanwhile, was working on something else entirely. The young dragon had been using the enhanced network capabilities to search through the planet's deep memory systems, looking for information that might help with long-term restoration. What Zephyr found changed their understanding of the situation completely. There are others. Zephyr's communication reached them through the network. Not here, but on other worlds. The plague didn't start here. It spread between star systems, targeting civilizations that used biological technology, but some survived. The implications were staggering. If other worlds had faced and survived the same plague that devastated New Terra, there might be solutions, treatments, or at least knowledge that could help complete the healing process. "We need to contact them," Administrator Wells said, his consciousness touching the edges of star charts stored in the planetary memory. "If there are other survivors out there, they need to know about what we've accomplished here, and we need their help to finish the job. But first, they had to stabilize their own situation. The storm was weakening, but it wouldn't fully dissipate until the planetary network was operating within normal parameters, and Lyrelith was reaching the absolute limits of her endurance. "I have an idea," Marcus announced through the network. "What if we made the repairs permanent but automated? Instead of requiring constant conscious control, we create systems that can maintain themselves." This concept was revolutionary for dragon technology, which had always relied on conscious biological control, but human engineering excelled at creating automated systems that could operate independently. By combining the two approaches, they could create hybrid networks that would function without requiring constant mental effort from Lyrelith. The final phase of the repair work became a crash course in hybrid technology development. Marcus worked with Zephyr to design self-maintaining interfaces between biological and mechanical systems. Dr. Chen and Dr. Warren developed protocols for monitoring and adjusting the hybrid networks without requiring direct mental connection. Harrison coordinated teams of miners who had volunteered to help install the new systems throughout the damaged cavern. Tommy, with his natural adaptability to the dragon communication methods, became the primary translator between Lyrelith's vast technical knowledge and human implementation capabilities. Through him, centuries of dragon engineering wisdom was adapted to work with human tools and understanding. "It's like teaching two different languages to speak together," Tommy explained during a brief rest period. "Dragon technology thinks in living patterns, human technology thinks in mechanical patterns. But underneath, they're both trying to solve the same problems." As the automated systems came online, the burden on Lyrelith began to ease. Her vital signs stabilized as the responsibility for maintaining the planetary network shifted to the hybrid systems that could operate without her constant attention. The storm outside began to break apart, its winds dropping from catastrophic to merely severe. The electromagnetic interference that had been disrupting all their systems cleared, allowing proper communication with the orbital station and Earth Command. "New Terra Base, this is Orbital Control," came the first clear transmission they had received in hours. "What's your status down there?" "We're reading massive changes in the planetary electromagnetic field." Administrator Wells looked around at the mixed group of humans and dragons working together in the crystal cavern, at the hybrid technology that was even now spreading through the planetary network to heal centuries of damage, at the beginning of something unprecedented in human experience. "Orbital Control," he replied. "This is Administrator Wells. We have successfully established first contact and cooperative relations with the native intelligent species of New Terra. The immediate crisis has been resolved through joint human-dragon technological cooperation. We're going to need to completely revise our colonization protocols." The response from orbit was several seconds of stunned silence, followed by a burst of excited questions that Wells knew would take hours to properly answer. But first, there was one more important task. With the immediate crisis past and the automated system stabilizing the planetary network, it was time to plan for the long-term relationship between humans and dragons on New Terra, and, possibly, to reach out to other worlds where similar partnerships might be waiting to be discovered. 6 months after the storm crisis, New Terra had become something unprecedented in human colonial history. The settlement had grown from a struggling mining outpost into a thriving research center where human technology and dragon biotechnology were being integrated in ways that amazed scientists. From across human space, Marcus stood in what had once been the damaged crystal cavern, now transformed into a living laboratory where human engineers and dragon biotechnicians worked side by side. The hybrid systems they had developed during the crisis had evolved far beyond simple repairs. They were creating entirely new forms of technology that neither species could have imagined alone. The latest efficiency reports are incredible, Dr. Chen told him, reviewing data from her tablet while Zephyr analyzed the same information through direct biological interface. Our medical systems are operating at 300% of their original capacity, with virtually zero waste or side effects. The medical applications had been the most successful integration so far. Human surgical techniques combined with dragon healing enhancement had resulted in treatments that could cure injuries and diseases that had previously been permanent disabilities. But more importantly, they had developed methods for treating the ancient plague damage that still affected some of the planetary systems. We're ready for the next phase. Zephyr communicated through the crystal network that now connected all major installations on New Terra. Deep system restoration. The old cities can be awakened. This was the project that had captured everyone's imagination. Using the planetary memory systems, they had located the remains of the ancient dragon cities buried deep beneath New Terra's surface. The cities weren't ruins in the conventional sense. They were biological systems that had gone dormant when the plague destroyed their controlling intelligences, but which could potentially be revived with the right approach. Tommy, now 13 and serving as the primary human dragon translator, was studying holographic displays that showed the city layouts. It's like bringing back the heart of the planet, he explained to the visiting delegation from Earth. These cities weren't just places where dragons lived. They were part of the planet's thinking system. The delegation from Earth included representatives from the Colonial Administration, the Xenological Institute, and the Interstellar Defense Force. They had come to evaluate the New Terra situation and determine official human policy toward the Dragon Partnership. Their leader, Director Sarah Martinez, was struggling to understand the implications of what they had discovered. You're telling me that this planet is essentially a single massive biological computer? Director Martinez asked, examining readings from the sensor array that Marcus and Zephyr had developed together. Not exactly, Dr. Warren corrected. It's more like a biological internet with physical processing nodes. The cities were major hubs in the network, but the actual intelligence was distributed across the entire planetary ecosystem. When the plague hit, the network fragmenting was what really destroyed the civilization. Lyrolith, now fully recovered and serving as the dragon's primary representative in human-dragon negotiations, projected her thoughts through the translation systems they had perfected. The comparison to your computer networks is apt but incomplete. Our technology integrates consciousness itself into the systems. When we restore the cities, we restore not just functions, but actual intelligence that has been dormant for centuries. This raised questions that went far beyond technology or even diplomacy. They were talking about resurrecting an entire artificial intelligence ecosystem that had once spanned multiple star systems. The ethical implications were staggering. What about the plague itself? Director Martinez asked. If it targeted biological technology, how do we know it's not still a threat? Marcus had been working on this question with teams from both species. The plague was designed to attack specific types of neural interfaces, he explained. Our hybrid systems are different enough to be immune, and we've developed detection and treatment protocols based on human medical technology. More importantly, they had made contact with other survivor worlds. Using communication methods that combined human radio technology with dragon biological transmission systems, they had reached 3 other planets where similar civilizations had survived the plague. Each world had developed different solutions to the same problems, and the exchange of information was accelerating restoration efforts everywhere. The plague wasn't natural. Zephyr had learned from communications with the other worlds. It was a weapon deployed by a species that feared the growth of biological technology networks. But that species is long extinct. The threat no longer exists. This information had come from Kepler 442b, where a civilization of crystalline beings had maintained detailed historical records throughout the plague years. Their libraries contained evidence of the plague's artificial origin and the identity of its creators. a machine intelligence that had seen biological technology as a threat to mechanical systems. Ironic, Dr. Chen had observed. They destroyed biological networks because they feared the combination of consciousness and technology. Now we're proving that cooperation between different types of intelligence is the key to advancement. The restoration of the first Dragon City was scheduled to begin within the week. It would be a joint operation, with human engineering teams providing the technological framework while dragon biological specialists guided the awakening of dormant systems. If successful, it would mark the beginning of a new era for New Terra and potentially for human-dragon cooperation throughout the galaxy. But there was resistance to consider. Not all humans were comfortable with the rapid changes on New Terra. Some colonies had expressed concerns about biological contamination or the security implications of partnering with alien intelligence systems. There were political movements on Earth calling for strict quarantine of New Terra until the long-term effects of human-dragon integration could be fully studied. We're moving too fast for some people, Administrator Wells admitted during a planning meeting. Earth Command is getting nervous about reports of humans with enhanced capabilities. Due to biological integration, it was true that some of the human colonists had developed new abilities. Through extended exposure to dragon biotechnology, Marcus found that his mechanical intuition had expanded to include biological systems. Dr. Chen could perceive cellular-level details without instruments. Tommy was developing something that could only be described as technopathic abilities, able to interface directly with complex systems through touch alone. The integration is voluntary, Lyrelith assured them, and reversible. Humans who choose enhanced capabilities can return to baseline biology if desired. The changes are adaptations, not permanent alterations. But the political concerns were real, and they threatened to disrupt the careful balance that had been established on New Terra. Director Martinez was under pressure to recommend restrictions that would slow or halt the integration process. What if we offered something to the skeptics? Tommy suggested during one of their strategy sessions. Something that proves human-dragon cooperation isn't just good for New Terra, but good for all of humanity? The idea that emerged was ambitious beyond anything they had attempted before. Using the combined knowledge of all the survivor worlds, they would develop solutions to problems that had plagued human space expansion for decades. Food production, energy generation, environmental restoration, even faster than light communication, all of these could be revolutionized through hybrid technology. We're not asking Earth to trust us, Marcus explained to Director Martinez. We're offering to prove that cooperation works by solving problems that benefit everyone. The demonstration they planned would showcase hybrid technology applications that could transform human civilization. Medical systems that could cure previously incurable diseases. Agricultural technology that could feed growing populations without environmental damage. Energy systems that were clean, efficient, and virtually unlimited. Communication networks that could connect human worlds across the galaxy in real time. If we can show that human-dragon cooperation produces benefits for all of humanity, not just New Terra, the political opposition will fade, Administrator Wells predicted. Director Martinez looked around the hybrid laboratory where humans and dragons worked together with an efficiency and creativity that neither species could match alone. You have 1 month, she said finally. Show me what this partnership can really accomplish. Then I'll make my recommendation to Earth Command. 1 month to prove that cooperation between species could change the future of human civilization. Marcus looked at Zephyr, who was already beginning to plan their most ambitious project yet. They would restore not just a city but an entire planetary intelligence network, and they would use it to reach out across the galaxy, connecting every world that had survived the ancient plague into a new network of cooperation and shared knowledge. The future of human-dragon relations hung in the balance. But for the first time since the crisis began, Marcus was confident they would succeed, because they weren't just fighting for New Terra anymore. They were fighting for a vision of the future where intelligence and technology could grow together, creating possibilities.